in Canada to opioids under this Liberal government. Opioid deaths are up over 200%. The radical drug liberalization, whereby the NDP Liberals legalized the use of fentanyl in Canada, has been yet another deadly experiment. Most of the ingredients come from China and Mexico, and yet our government cannot stop them at the border. Fact, Canadian Security Services identified 350 organized crime rings operating within our border. 63 of these groups have international connections to China, Mexico, and other nations. Fact, in British Columbia, police recently discovered a super lab containing enough fentanyl and materials to kill 95 million people. In the year leading up to September 2024, U.S. border agents seized 11,600 pounds of drugs coming from Canada. Fentanyl seizures tripled between 2023 and 2024. Our neighbors have noticed. President Trump has raised concerns, and he has wrongly used this risk as a rationale for tariffs. These tariffs are unjustified and they are wrong. The United States needs to do more on its border, and so do we. But frankly, it should not take a foreign leader to get our government to reverse its deadly policies that are killing our people. It is not for President Trump or any other foreign leader that I want to stop fentanyl in my country. It's so that not one more mother has to bury her face in her hands in the terrible agony of learning her son died in a back alley somewhere from this poison. And that is why I will take back control of Canada's borders. My common sense, Canada First plan should immediately be adopted by Parliament. We must recall Parliament now and put Liberal Party power struggles aside so that we can adopt this plan to save our people and secure our borders. The plan: immediately deploy military troops, helicopters, and surveillance to the border to spot and intercept risks. As the recent remarks by the Canadian Forces Chief of the Defence Staff, General Jenny Kerrigan, offered earlier this month, we can deploy military assets into the sky, whether helicopters or other surveillance tools, and we should do so. In fact, we should have done so long ago. 2, expand the powers of CBSA border agents to patrol everywhere along the border, not just at official border crossings. 3, hire 2,000, at least 2,000 new CBSA agents to intercept illegal crossers, drugs, guns, and other dangerous law breaking. 4, install high-powered scanners at all major land crossings and shipping ports. These scanners can see through the walls of containers and vehicles to spot drugs, guns, and stolen cars. 5, build border surveillance towers that we can deploy on and use to scan the landscape and detect incursions. Also, deploy truck-mounted drone systems that can spot incursions from the sky. 6, track departures. We should keep track of who's leaving so that we know which deportees are still in our country. As I said at the outset, the government amazingly doesn't know how many people are here illegally. How are we supposed to protect our borders when there could be over 500,000 people inside those borders illegally, according to the government's own admissions? We will pay for the Canada First border plan by scrapping the Liberal gun buyback and cutting bureaucracy. The gun buyback, actually I should call it the gun grab, has been completely ineffective. They've spent $60 million and they admit it has not recovered a single gun. Meanwhile, even if they did get guns from this plan, according to the supporters of gun control, the main lobby group supporting gun control, the people who give their guns in would just take the payment they receive to buy other guns that are very similar in nature. Finally, the gun buyback targets licensed, law-abiding, trained and tested hunters off-duty police officers and other highly trained professionals who are of no risk. Obviously, no criminal is going to participate in a gun grab with the government. It will only be law-abiding people. The police do not support this gun grab. In fact, they say that 85% of guns used in crime in Toronto are illegal guns that come in through the border. So let's stop the gangsters and gun smugglers. I want to protect Canadians from criminals. Justin Trudeau and Mark Carney want to protect turkeys from hunters. We're also going to cut billions of dollars in pricey consultants and phase out thousands of back-office bureaucratic jobs through attrition. Less bureaucracy and waste, more boots on the ground, and more drones, choppers, and surveillance in the sky. We'll let lawful people and goods come in. We'll keep drugs, terrorists, and other threats out. And we'll save trade with the United States. It's funny, here we are trying to save our trade with another country while we can't even trade with ourselves. And that's why earlier this morning, I announced a Canada First plan to bring free trade between our provinces, allow our truckers and our entrepreneurs to move goods and services affordably to our people, something that could boost average family income by $6,000 a year and reduce our helpless dependence on the United States. Isn't it incredible that after 9 years of Liberals, it's either easier for criminals to bring drugs and guns illegally over Canada's border than it is for our entrepreneurs to bring their products over provincial borders? Let's fix that. Let's knock down these barriers. Let's have a truly free trading, free market Canadian economy that's capable of standing on its own 2 feet. Let's do that, not to appeal to any foreign leader, but to put Canadians back in charge of their lives and their country. Let us restore the Canadian promise that anyone from anywhere can do anything, that hard work gets you a powerful paycheck and pension that buys affordable food and homes in safe neighborhoods, protected by strong borders under a proud flag that represents the freest nation on earth. Canada. Canada here, Canada now, Canada forever. Let's bring it home.
Thank you. We'll now take questions from the floor.
Hi, Jared Yeager here from the Western Standard. Just English is fine. What message does it send that Mexico got a 1-month pause before Canada? And do you think Trudeau's call with Trump today will yield a similar result?
Unfortunately, I wasn't on the call, so I can't tell you anything about how it went. But what I can say is that we need a Canada First agenda that will protect us against these unfair and unjustifiable tariffs. And that Canada First plan must include retaliatory tariffs to deter the attacks on our economy. It must include a strong border to protect our people against drugs, guns, and terrorists. It must include a bring-it-home tax cut and red tape cut so that we can reward hard work, bring home billions of dollars of investment, develop our own resources, and it must include free trade among our own provinces. That is how we become stronger, more self-reliant, and less hopelessly dependent on foreign powers and foreign governments.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, Michelle Gassoub, CBC, and if we could get an answer in French as well, please.
You're not going to ask me to step aside and let the Liberals stay in power through to eternity, as your CBC colleague said yesterday.
You've called on the Prime Minister to bring back Parliament and pass your plan to counter Donald Trump's tariffs. Does that mean you're willing to work with other parties to come up with an agreed-upon plan before voting non-confidence and bringing down the government?
Well, of course, we can't do any of those things because Justin Trudeau and the Liberals have shut Parliament. Parliament is closed. You should direct your question to the Liberals. Why, in the middle of this crisis, have the Liberal Party powers put themselves ahead of Canadians? They're in the middle of a Liberal Party power struggle. Again, concerned about themselves, their own self-interest, rather than immediately recalling Parliament so that we can pass a Canada First plan like the one I've just laid out.
En français.
Merci beaucoup. Les libéraux
Thank you very much.
ont fermé le Parlement.
Liberals have shut down Parliament, so it's impossible to vote on a plan to put Canada first. There is no way to vote. The Liberals have placed themselves before the country. Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Carney and Ms. Freeland believe that it's the Liberal Party first. Instead, it should be Canada first. We should be in the House of Commons working to resolve the trade crisis caused by the unjustifiable tariffs imposed by President Trump. So I want to see Parliament return now in order to pass a Canada First plan that will protect our borders, that will allow for free trade between the provinces, and allow us to introduce retaliatory tariffs against the U.S., move forward with a lot of other energy projects like the LNG project in Quebec, and allow us to be strong in the face of the threat and the tariffs coming from abroad.
Next question.
Hi, Thomas Seal from Bloomberg. Yesterday, Elizabeth May said that on the federal leaders' call, the Prime Minister said it had become increasingly clear that there was no evidence or further actions on border security that would make any difference. Trump would only double down. Today, Trump is talking about market access for US banks. So what's your understanding of Trump's ultimate goal here, and should concessions like more market access for US companies be on the table?
You'd have to ask President Trump what his goals are. He's said he wants to put America first. Well, I will put Canada first. We need a Canada First plan that's good for this country. We need to protect our borders, not to please any other foreign leader. I've been calling to reinforce our border for about 8 years now. I was the first to come out and demand a closure of Roxham Road, where tens of thousands of people entered illegally. I was then the one who forced Justin Trudeau through an ultimatum to finally close Roxham Road. I called for scanners to be put in at all of our ports well over a year ago in order to intercept drugs, guns, and other contraband. I've been saying that we need to have strong borders for years. And I haven't been doing that to please anyone in the White House. I've been doing it to save the lives of our people. That is what it means to put Canada first.
Thank you. This will be the final question.
Aaron McCarthy, Global News. Much of what you've said is going to require resources. How much would a Conservative government spend on defence priorities in the first year?
Well, I've already said that we're going to use the dollar-for-dollar principle, which is to cut waste in order to fund stronger borders. And I gave very tangible examples. We will save $600 million by getting rid of the ridiculous gun grab that has not taken a single firearm off the street and goes after licensed, law-abiding, trained and tested hunters and sport shooters. And we will use that money for frontline borders. Second, we will reduce the size of the federal back office bureaucracy. There are roughly 17,000 bureaucrats that voluntarily retire every single year. I'm not going to replace them all. And through that powerful mathematics of attrition, we will reduce the morbidly obese back office bureaucracy that has grown by 50% in a decade, and we'll put that money into frontline, boots on the ground, drones, helicopters, and other surveillance in the sky. Dollar for dollar. Whenever I bring in new spending, it will be matched by $1 of savings. That's how single moms, seniors, and small businesses run their finances. It's how I will run the government.
We are going to go back to what the Conservative leader said, but we're going back to Washington. U.S. President Donald Trump is once again calling on Canada to become the 51st state.
On Canada, when you talk to Justin Trudeau again, is there anything he can give you at 3 p.m. when you talk again to also
I don't know.
Pause,
I don't know.
like you said with Mexico?
I don't know. We have big deficits with Canada, like we do with all countries. I mean, I look at some of the deals made, I say, who the hell made these deals are so bad? But with Canada, I have a talk with him, and you maybe know or maybe not. We're going to meet again or talk again at 3 o'clock. right after my next meeting, and we'll see what happens. I can't tell you what's going to happen.
You mentioned that he could agree to change your mind on the tariffs.
Well, we can always, look, what I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state. We give them protection, military protection. We don't need them to build our cars. I'd rather see Detroit or South Carolina or any one of our, Tennessee, any one of our states build the cars. They could do it very easily. We don't need them for the cars. We don't need them for lumber. We don't need them for anything. We don't need them for energy. We have more energy than they do. We don't need them for energy. So I say, why are we doing this? Why are we willing to lose between $100 billion and $200 billion a year? We don't need them. As a state, it's different. As a state, it's much different. And there are no tariffs. So I'd love to see that, but some people say that would be a long shot. If people wanted to play the game right, it would be 100% certain that they'd become a state. But a lot of people don't like to play the game because they don't have a threshold of pain. And there would be some pain, but not a lot. The pain would be really there. So we're going to meet again by phone at 3 o'clock, and we'll let you know what
on
it is.
Israel, President Trump, you're prepared to meet with Benjamin Netanyahu.
Coming in tomorrow.
Yes, you've mentioned in the past you're concerned about Israel being too small geographically. Would you support annexation of parts of the West
Donald
Bank?
Trump speaking in the Oval Office just moments ago, once again leaning into this notion of Canada becoming the 51st state of the United States. We heard the president there saying, I would like to see Canada become our 51st state. We give them protection, military protection. We don't need them to build our cars. I'd rather see the cars built elsewhere. Saying, why are we doing this? As a state, it would be different. There would be no tariffs if Canada were to be a state. I'd love to see that. Some people say that would be a long shot if people wanted to play the game right. It would be 100% certain that they would become a state, but a lot of people don't want to play the game because they have a threshold of pain. CBC's Caroline Bargut was listening in. And so, Caroline, we've heard this before, you know, the conversation around what is going on in terms of what Donald Trump wants from Canada, you know, it gets mixed into, is it about banks? Is it about fentanyl at the border? Is it about migrants crossing? He consistently, persistently leans into this notion that he wants Canada to become the 51st state of the United States. It is not something that the vast majority of Canadians have indicated to pollsters that they want, but that is what he wants. And he says if that were to happen, there would be no tariffs.
Well, I got to say, I hope that that is not what this is going to hinge on, because Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said repeatedly that Canada is not going to become the 51st state. As you see, U.S. President Donald Trump continues to move the goalpost when it comes to these tariffs. This is a very fluid situation since he signed those executive orders saying that 25% tariffs would come into effect tonight at midnight. Now, he has been saying all along, one of the things that he has been consistent about is he's been saying this is about fentanyl. This is about the fentanyl crisis. He says that crisis is killing about 200,000 Americans a year, and he says that Canada needs to do more to stop that. Canada has beefed up its border in hopes of appeasing him. So far, it does not appear to be working. This is what Kevin Hassett, his director of White House National Economic Council, said about these tariffs and about fentanyl specifically. Okay. We don't have that clip right now. Well, I will tell you, he said this is not about a trade war. He says this is about fentanyl, even though U.S. border and customs officials have said repeatedly that only 43 pounds of fentanyl was seized along the Canada-U.S. border last year, as opposed to the more than 21,000 pounds that was seized from the U.S.-Mexico border last year. As we know, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has a phone conversation with the president at 3 o'clock this afternoon. As you heard Donald Trump saying a few moments ago when a reporter asked him, is there anything specific that Canada can say or Canada can give in order to make these tariffs go away? He said specifically, I don't know. And then he launched into the 51st state comments. So we are really just waiting to see what happens with that phone conversation to find out whether or not these tariffs will be imposed at midnight tonight.
Caroline, so much to follow. Thank you. The CBC's Caroline Bargout live in Washington as the clock ticks down to that next phone conversation between the Prime Minister and the President, scheduled for 3.
So we'll have to see what's going to happen at 3 o'clock when Trump and Justin Trudeau will speak to each other. Okay, I'm going to end it here. Just going to give you another 5 minutes here.
3 o'clock Eastern. Let's turn to the CBC's Karina Roman, who was listening to Conservative Party leader Pierre Pollievre speaking in Vancouver a short time ago. I want to get to that, but Karina, I think we should also get to what I was just talking about with Caroline, if that's okay, just because I think that, you know, the Canadian government and Canadian officials have been trying to respond, right, in terms of what is it that the American administration wants. And then you listen to the different secretaries, you listen to, and it's about fentanyl, it's about migrants, it's about this. And then once again, and I really think it's fair to characterize that Donald Trump has leaned into this notion, this desire of his, that Canada become the 51st state. It would seem to be that these tariffs are, and he said it before, forcing Canada through economic coercion, those were his words, forcing Canada to become the 51st state. That's what these tariffs are about, trying to inflict pain on this country, trying to make Canada submit to becoming the 51st state.
The more people talk in the background, in quiet hallways and in meetings and things we're hearing from senior government sources that, you know, can't speak publicly, there is this increasing recognition that, that yes, the goalposts keep changing. Yes, there's things we can do on the border and fentanyl to try and address those concerns, but that at the heart of this is a fight over sovereignty. Whether that will materialize will come down to, you know, what kind of support the president will keep having for his threats. And if he goes through with the tariffs, which would happen at midnight tonight, then how long Americans, especially his supporters, will endure the pain that they will feel from a price point. Because I was listening to an analyst this morning talk about how the one thing Donald Trump does not like is being unpopular. He likes to be liked. So if there's any sway in this at all, it really comes down to that. And yet, you know, this government, in its previous experience with Donald Trump and his first administration, one thing they, I guess, discovered over time or realized over time was it's not actually beneficial to react to everything Donald Trump says, that you really do have to sort of see what he does. And otherwise, you could just be running around in circles forever. So it's not that you don't take what he says seriously, but other than saying we're not going to become the 51st state, it's really hard to react to what you think might be really going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, all we're doing is we're just kind of putting it out there, that this is what he says, this is what he wants, and
Lonis Mortillo said no, but US dollar, yes.
That doesn't necessarily translate into it becoming a reality, Karina. Canadians agreeing to that. I'm not saying that at all, but he has indicated this over and over and over again.
He hasn't backed away from it at all.
Not at all.
Interesting, because we were going to talk about Pierre Pollievre's news conference.
Sure.
The two things I took away from that is we actually cut away from it before a question because we thought the questions were done. He did face a question about what Trump is saying again about Canada becoming the 51st state, and Pierre Pollievre also saying that will never happen, that Canada is an independent country. Then, as Pierre Pollievre is tending to do, because this is why he's a savvy politician, pivoting to say what's made Canada so vulnerable is our current leadership and the current Liberal government, and that if he were Prime Minister, he would make Canada even more independent and stronger in a way that we would not be, Canada would not be so vulnerable to these threats. That is obviously his take on things. But it's just interesting to see Pierre Pollievre use this situation as a way to get forward his message on why he would not necessarily do things differently, just do things better and faster. And, they had 9 years, Liberal government, to do these things and they didn't. So why trust them to finally do them now? That kind of thing. When it comes to, moving along interprovincial trade and actually strengthening the border and reducing crime and that kind of thing. So it's just interesting to see also the sign that Pierre Pollievre had in front, and now his is no longer axe the tax. It's Canada first. So the Conservatives have had to pivot because of these events into messaging. And today it felt like a much more significant pivot than before, which it felt a bit more like a scramble.
I'm glad you heard that, because we really did think that Pierre Pollievre was finished speaking, and that's why we left, because they said last question he had stopped speaking, and then we did hear this news that Donald Trump was saying this again. So it is important context to say both the Prime Minister and the Conservative leader has said this isn't going to happen. So it's just important.
Look, they agree on something.
They agree on something, and I'm sure we'll play that clip.
Yeah, they agree on something, and also Justin Trudeau said that Alberta has the right to sell their oil, so he let them sell their oil, according to maybe Daniel Smith, and Donald Trump was speaking about that Mar-a-Lago. So this is how we'll end it, and hopefully I will get some streaming video for you today at 3 o'clock for Justin Trudeau and Donald Trump speaking to each other.